Righto, tally there champs, it's Saul Goodman here, and let's see how this XPS 159500 games, and it's not a gaming laptop, but of course everybody wants to know how it games. It does have some gaming specs. The one I have here has the Intel 10th generation 10750H processor. That's a 6-core 45 watt processor. We have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and also of course the GTX 1650 Ti. First time I've reviewed a 1650 Ti, and yeah, it goes alright, let me tell you. Now I will be comparing some benchmarks to the Surface Book 3. I'm in the actual process of doing benchmarks on the MacBook Pro, so yeah, I will show compared to the MacBook Pro in future videos. And also guys, make sure you sub up because I've got a content creation review, and I'm sorry if I haven't answered any questions because I've been, busy doing this, all the testing on this, and just leave comments down there. I'm going to read them and I'm going to do FAQ or Q&A on this laptop. So let me know down there in the comments what you want to know about, and just, quickly, DPC latency is fine. The trackpad, the sort of loosey-goosey thing, I think that's by design. It's got a sort of like dampened clunk on it. I think you get used to it. I have some things to say about that in another video. Also, the display is amazing. Yes, it is a 4K touch display I have here, Ultra HD+. Now it is a slow display, so you're talking about 35 milliseconds response. Pretty much all the high quality displays on laptops, pretty much the ones with, wide color gamut, 100% DCI-P3 or 100% Adobe RGB, they're all slow. But it's not a gaming laptop. As I've said many times before, you don't buy this for gaming. So if you're 50% a gamer, get another laptop. That being said, it games really well. Better than I expected. And remember in the last video, go check out my last video on this, the unboxing first look, and I have a look at the thermals with the old BIOS. Go check that out because I said this. It's a BIOS update, but I want to do pre-BIOS. See how it is with gaming, before and after BIOS. See if there's any real difference, if they nerfed it. Yeah. And guess what? They did nerf it too, because yeah, it was going too crazy. I mean, it was pumping 75 watts into the CPU and 40 watts into the GPU, which I roughly add that up. What's that? It's over 100 watts, 110 watts or something. It's only a 130 watt package. It wasn't going to end well. We're going to have some power limit throttle in there. It's just going to happen. I mean, the display itself is 10.4 watts. So to try and fit all that in a 130 watt package. Now, I did say I was going to test it on the old BIOS. No, please upgrade to the new BIOS because I think it was just going too nuts, and they've actually probably overcorrected with the new BIOS. Now, with the new BIOS or the old BIOS, and we'll talk about mostly the new BIOS because that's what you're going to have, that's what you're going to upgrade to, and future XPSs will probably ship with that BIOS, if not a newer one. After the boost clocks are over, because it'll boost on the GPU and CPU, the GPU does 50 watts, the CPU will do around 45 watts, or even more, like when it's boosting at the start, or do up to 60 watts, whatever. But once the boost is over, you're settling in at about 40 watts on the CPU, 40 watts on the GPU. That's with the old BIOS and the new BIOS. When it's like that, it's only 80 odd degrees, 80 something degrees. It's not very hot. It's certainly not pushing the thermal limits there. But with the new BIOS, they sort of nerfed it, right? Because I don't know why. For some reason, it seems to be arbitrary. It will just go down to 15 watts on the CPU and 40 watts on the GPU. This has been power limited by Dell on purpose. I think they've overcorrected here. I think the next BIOS, they'll put a bit more performance into it. But the good news is, even at that state, when it does go to that state, because it doesn't always go there, I noticed in Battlefield, it fired up straight away to 15 watts on the CPU. I wonder if there is a whitelist because it just went there straight away. But some games, it was doing the 40 watts on the CPU and GPU pretty much all the time. But if we go to worst case scenario, if it does go to 15 watts on the CPU and 40 watts on the GPU, you know me, I like my performance. I like to run to the thermal limits. But this thing here, even at 15 watts on the CPU, 40 watts on the GPU, which by the way, in the 60 degrees, fan noise very low. I really appreciated that, I can tell you now. It was still pushing 60 frames and above, 1080p high settings every game. Witcher was marginal, just on the edge of 60 FPS. The only other game where it was less than 60 frames per second was Red Dead Redemption. This is 1080p high settings because that's how I tested all the games. It really surprised me that in that state, again, the 15 watt CPU and the 40 watt GPU, which is worst case scenario, still pushing the 60 FPS at high, all the games. I can't complain in that regard, even though I do like my performance, because it was bliss gaming like that. I'm getting the 60 FPS I want, I'm getting the high settings I want, but no noise or very low noise. And the heat, what heat? It's in the 60s. CPU and GPU, it's in the 60s. So that GPU is limited to 87 degrees, 50 watts when it's boosting. And I'm actually really surprised that 1650 Ti, it goes very well. You'll be very surprised when you see the benchmarks later compared to a 1660 Ti that's in the Surface Book 3. Very interesting. Gaming on this display is just amazing. It looks good. It might not be fast, but it looks amazing. One thing you have to know is you're either going to have to stretch 1080p or you're going to have to play in windowed mode, which will actually lessen your frame rates. The way I get around this is I just change the resolution to 1080p and then, yeah, it just crops automatically and then I can play the games and it's not playing it stretched, or I don't have to play in windowed mode. So that's a pro tip there. The sound is amazing on this. And because it was gaming at that quiet state, I could actually hear the speakers. Unlike every other gaming laptop, I can't even hear the speakers. What's the point of them? This thing here, cool, quiet, awesome gaming experience because those speakers are amazing. They really are good. Are they better than the MacBook Pro? Oh, I'm going to have to put them to a bit more of a test, but they do sound amazing. External heat on the skin, nothing to worry about. 45 degrees was the hottest I've seen on the keyboard. Don't put it on your lap because the vents are there. You're going to block them. Now, as I said before, some games are doing the 40 watts on the CPU, 40 watts on the GPU all the time, and it never went to that state where the CPU was doing 15 watts. And even at that point, the temperatures were well controlled. They were in the 80s, and everything was done in the performance mode in Dell Power Management there. So I was getting the maximum performance out of it there. And as I said, if you're a gamer, don't buy this laptop. But I've got to say right now, I'm going to eat my words where I say I want things to run to the thermal limits, because if I'm gaming here 60 frames per second, high settings, 1080p, and it's quiet, it's cool, what do I need extra performance? It's a 60 hertz display. It does what I want. It's going to game how I want. So I'm happy with that. And stay tuned for my content creation review compared to the other laptops. Check out the benchmarks. Check out the Red Dead run at the end as well. That'll give you a good idea of the thermals and the wattage it's putting out. And by the way, on the telemetry, the top wattage is the CPU. The bottom wattage is the GPU. And that's on the left, sort of in the middle. So yeah, happy days for gaming. It could get more performance out of it. There's no doubt about it. I think they will in a future BIOS, but cool, quiet gaming. I like it.